Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, September 6, 2022. My name is Alyssa Olson, and I'm the president of the Planning Commission. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioners Ford and Marwa will be absent this evening. Commissioner Alper. Present. Thank you. Commissioner Baxley.
Present.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
Commissioner Fayola. Here. Commissioner McGuire.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Rainville.
Present.
That's 7 members present.
All right, we have a quorum. Next, we're going to proceed to the agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. We'll begin with acceptance of the minutes from the regular meeting on August 15th, 2022. Could I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion to move.
Is there a second?
Motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes and the minutes are adopted. Next, we're going to organize our agenda for the evening. So again, it's available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Otherwise, if you want a copy, they're on the dais there. So I'm going to read through each item on the agenda and state whether it's slated for consent or discussion. Consent items will be passed with staff recommendation and any listed conditions by the board without discussion. Discussion items, we will have a public hearing and discuss them before we take a vote. So if you agree with staff recommendation on an item, you do not need to raise your hand to indicate that you want to speak on an item. It will be passed as listed. If you would like to speak against staff recommendation on an item, we'll have you raise your hand. And anyone who wants to speak on an item tonight, raise your hand, please, so we can get an idea of how many people we have for each. When I get to those, so I thank you. Good audience participation. So I'm going to go through the items, and if you're interested in speaking against staff recommendation on those items, raise your hand. So the first item is item number 4, which is 3001 Broadway Street Northeast. Staff is recommending this item for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation for item number 4? Excuse me. All right, seeing none, we'll put item number 4 on consent. Item number 5 is 2318 Johnson Street Northeast. We will be discussing item number 5. Who's here to discuss item number 5? Okay. Next is item number 6, 1717 Central Avenue Northeast. This item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item number 6? All right, we'll put item 6 on consent. Item number 7 is 1832 and 1838 DuPont Avenue North. This item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item number 7? All right, seeing none, we'll put item number 7 on consent. Item number 8 is 210 Lake Street East. We will discuss item number 8. How many people are here to speak to item number 8? Okay, thanks. Item number 9 is 1111 3rd Avenue South, and we will be discussing item number 9. Commissioner Alper would like to discuss this item. Item number 10 is 2800, 2802, 2840, and 2850 North Wayzata Boulevard. This item is recommended for consent. Is anybody here to speak against staff recommendation on item number 10? All right, seeing none, we'll put item number 10 on consent. Item number 11 is 1201 East Lake Street. This item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item number 11? All right, we'll put 11 on consent. Item number 12 is 1924 26th Street East. This item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item number 12? Okay, we'll put item number 12 on consent. Item number 13 is 3238 Girard Avenue South. This item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item 13? Okay, we'll put item 13 on consent. Item number 14 is 2815 through 2821 West 44th Street. This item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item 14? All right. We'll put item number 14 on our discussion. And item number 15 is electric vehicle charging ordinance, and this item is recommended for consent. Is there anyone who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item number 15? Right, seeing none, we'll put item number 15 on consent. So to review, we have items number 4, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15 on consent. And we have items number 5, 8, 9, and 14 on discussion. Commissioners, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we've adopted the agenda. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. So I'm going to open a public hearing on the consent agenda before we vote to approve the consent agenda. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on the consent agenda? If so, you can come to the podium now and state your name and address for the record. All right, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll close the public hearing for the consent agenda. Commissioners, could I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passed. So if you are here for items 4, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, or 15, those items have been approved. Good luck on your projects. All right, so now next we will move on to our discussion items. And the first item is item number 5, and staff is Peter Crandall.
Commissioners, Peter Crandall, Senior City Planner with CPED Land Use. The first project that we will be looking at tonight is located at 2318 Johnson Street Northeast. This is in the Wyndham Park neighborhood of Northeast Minneapolis. The site is currently zoned for the R1A multiple family district with the BFC4 Corridor 4 built form overlay district. The site is currently vacant today, and the applicant is here to request several land use applications to construct a new 3-story residential building with 4 dwelling units. This is the zoning map of the site, and then an aerial view showing that currently vacant site. It's, again, directly across the street, across Johnson Street from Wyndham Park. And then the land use and built form map showing the Corridor 4 designation of the property. And then some of the context showing that the entirety of Johnson Street Northeast is guided for Corridor 4, along with Lowry, which is 1 block to the north. And then you can see Central Avenue, the other goods and services corridor, a few blocks to the west of the site. And these are some pictures of the site, again, currently vacant. And then some photos of the property from the shared alley at the rear. As you can see, there's a pretty significant slope on the site from Johnson towards the alley. And then plans for the new 3-story residential building with 4 dwelling units. The project would have principal entryways at both the front and the rear of the structure. The applicant is proposing 4 surface parking stalls at the rear of the structure that would be accessed via the shared alley. And a couple of accessory structures, including a parking canopy and trash enclosure. And then these are some elevations and renderings of the proposed building. So in summary, the applications required for the project include a rezoning from the R1A multiple family district to the R4 multiple family district. This would bring the zoning in line with the land use and built form guidance in the 2040 plan and allow for the construction of a multiple family structure of 4 units on the site. There is a couple of variance requests, which I'm going to go through in more detail here in a second, and then the site plan review for that new 3-story residential building. So with respect to the 2 variance requests, one of the variances is to reduce the minimum established front yard. The required front yard under the current built form overlay would be 15 feet. There's an established yard that is established by the 2 existing homes to the north and south of the site, and then a line drawn from the nearest point of those 2 structures, which is shown here on the slide. As you can see, a pretty small portion of the proposed structure encroaches into that established front yard, so that would be the request that the applicant is making to reduce that requirement. And then the second variance concerns the parking area at the rear of the structure. Under the ordinance, surface parking lots with more than 3 spaces are required to provide adequate maneuvering space such that none of the vehicles would be required to maneuver in the alleyway. The applicant is proposing 4 spaces, and so they are requesting a variance to modify those standards to allow 4 cars to maneuver in the alleyway under these proposed conditions. Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning and the site plan review application, but is recommending denial of the 2 variance requests, primarily because staff could not determine a practical difficulty under the existing site conditions for those 2 requests. And that kind of summarizes our position. I can take any questions, and I know the applicant's here as well to speak to the project.
Thank you, Peter. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? I have a question. So the maneuvering space, I mean, it appears that there is quite a bit of space behind the cars. So what's the required, is that what the red box is then on this slide? That's what would be required for maneuvering space, or?
Yeah, so typically what would be required for this size parking lot would be a 22-foot drive aisle that the vehicles could maneuver and turn around in without encroaching into the alleyway to back up, essentially. So if it were 3 spaces, this configuration would be fine under the ordinance, but because it's 4, it has that additional sort of space requirement.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you, Peter. If there's no other questions for staff, we can move on to the public hearing. Is the applicant here to speak on this item?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is William Wells. I am the architect. I'm also here with Eric Olestad. He's the developer with Value Homes. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the premise of the project and then the variances. We've been working on this project for a couple of months with staff and neighbors, and if you could zoom in a little bit more on that slide, I'd appreciate it. It talks sort of just contextually where the project is across the street from the park in northeast Minneapolis. We are on Johnson Street. Currently, the site is a vacant lot, and you can see that Johnson Street is a major connector in northeast Minneapolis down to the quarry and 35W. So that street is actually has been upzoned as part of the 2040 comp plan and is a very busy street right now. There is some development south of us. There's some multifamily housing just south of us, but that development is starting to move north. The premise of the project and the plans that you have in front of you is essentially housing for families. We are looking to build units. If you look specifically at the floor plans, you have sort of a master bedroom, and then there's 2 or 3 smaller bedrooms. We are specifically going to be marketing and designing the building for a couple with kids who's going to live here across the street from the park. And that's good for Minneapolis, and that's good for the Minneapolis public school system and the neighborhood in general. In terms of the parking, to make this development work, we have to have 1 space per unit. We have to have 1 parking space per unit. People with kids need a car. There is no parking allowed on the street, and that was just changed. That's a site plan, if you could zoom in on that, please. So this just changed on Johnson Street. Used to be a park on Johnson Street, but the city of Minneapolis rebuilt that street, probably in anticipation of the increased traffic on Johnson Street. But now you can't park on Johnson Street anymore. So that's part of a hardship that we are experiencing. There is very little street parking anywhere in the neighborhood. We are requesting 1 parking space per unit. We do have a front yard setback variance and a maneuvering variance. These variances are related. So I am requesting to move the building forward effectively 1 foot. It's 1 foot forward, just to align it with the building to the south of us. So the front facades, you can see on the site plan, the buildings will align as you sort of go down the street. So we're asking to just align the fronts of the buildings. And I need that extra foot to help with the maneuvering in the alley with the cars, so the cars are not hitting the garages or crossing the property line. So that is one reason that we are asking to move the building forward just a little bit. It's hard to understand on the site plan, but there is very significant topography out there. There's a double slope. The site from the sidewalk in front of the site to the back of the site slopes down about 7 feet. It's a very serious slope. And then from the north to the south, there's about a 4.5 foot slope. So the maneuvering in the alley is extremely difficult. And then you've got 3 garages right on the property line. It is extremely hard to turn and maneuver, especially in the winter when it snows. And then I lose another 2 feet from snow. It gets so tight back there. We're just afraid we're going to cross the property line as the cars back up, or we're going to hit one of the garages. So I need that extra foot just to help with the maneuvering back there, just to make it safe, to make it safer back there for everybody, and make sure that we're trying to be good neighbors. As far as the parking, I'd like to talk just a little bit more about the parking. The staff report recommends 3 parking spots, but the staff report also says we're allowed to have 8 parking spots. We can have 8 parking spots legally on this site. The staff recommends that we have 3 parking spots, which the zoning code doesn't require. It doesn't say we have to have 3 parking spots. They're just recommending 3 spots, but that doesn't change the maneuvering problem. If I move down to 3 spots, I still have the same maneuvering problem. So just going directly with the staff recommendations on the site plan approval, on number 5, site plan review, condition of approval number 5, they're saying change down to 3 parking spots. They're trying to use that to remove the variance for the alley. But that doesn't solve the problem. I've still got 3 cars that have a maneuvering problem. So that doesn't work. And then I'd have 1 spot, I'd have 1 dwelling unit that didn't have parking. So that's not solving problems, number 5. So we asked that number 5 be removed, and we don't think that zoning staff has the authority to declare that we only have 3 parking spots, because we're legally allowed 8 parking spots. And there's just the issue of where the 4th unit would park. I just want to address one other thing quickly. We've met with the neighborhoods a couple times. We've heard concerns that the building is too big for the site and that we're overbuilding the site. And I would just like to talk about that quickly. that is a 3D rendering of the proposed design, which is a 3-story building. The neighbors have sent in some emails requesting that the building be changed to 3 units. If I change the building to 3 units, it's the exact same design. Exactly the same building. We would do 3 flats, 3 stories, 3 flats. So just going to 3 units doesn't change the building design at all for us. I just wanted to point that out to staff and the neighbors here tonight. I'd also like to point out that we are legally allowed an FAR of 2 on the site, and we are only at an FAR of 1. It's just significantly lower. So we have intentionally made the building smaller than we are legally allowed. We're legally allowed a 2, an FAR of 2, which is significant, but we're only doing an FAR of 1 on the site. So I just wanted to point that out to neighbors and the planning commission that the building is significantly smaller than it could be on the site. And we have intentionally done that to just try to make the building look like kind of a big house, to be sensitive to the scale of the street and the neighbors. I am available for questions, if there are any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner McGuire?
I guess I don't have a question, I just have a comment for the applicant. So, just because you're allowed to do up to something doesn't mean that that works with the setbacks and the requirements for turning radius. So our staff, city staff definitely has the ability to interpret the code and tell you can't do that within the setbacks. So I think staff's interpretation in their report is fine. They just are interpreting the code. It sounds like there's a threshold of 3 parking stalls, and when you go over that, that triggers some additional rules. So with the floor area ratio, same thing. You just still have to make it work within the site you're given. Every site's different. I have no issue with the overall use, but I just wanted to say that staff's interpretation of our rules is certainly correct.
Commissioner Fayola?
Thanks for the information on the project. I just wanted to get an understanding. It's 3 stories, so the 4 units, is there 1 garden level? And okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Rainville?
Could you speak a little bit more to the parking? It seems like if you have 4 units but only 3 parking spots and you can't park on Johnson, you're building family units, people are going to have cars.
Correct.
What's your side of the story on that?
Correct. We are marketing to couples with kids. We do anticipate that there will be couples with kids living across from the park. The Wyndham Park is beautiful. Beautiful park. We would like to have 1 parking space per unit to make the project usable and viable. We need to have 1 space per unit. We are allowed 8 spots legally on the site. That's in the staff report. We think that 1 space per unit is reasonable. If the only other parking spot would be about a block away, and it would be just extremely challenging for guests or on one of those units to park a block away. It seems like kind of an unreasonable request to do that. I think the developer has more to add about this. He would like to speak to this.
All right, if you could do it quickly, we want to get to the public hearing.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Eric Olestad, and I do a lot of stuff at Northeast, love Northeast and Minneapolis in general. And we had a nice meeting with the neighborhood group, so everybody was invited to speak, and we went back and forth and talked about what would be good and what would work for everyone. There was a lot of support. We did have, you might have this in front of you, Mark Schneider at 2302 Johnson Street says, I think it's a solid project. I look forward to it gaining more neighbors on my block should it be approved. Contrary to what some of my neighbors claim, I don't believe this will have any negative impacts on the block. It's quite clear from the visual renderings that this project would neither overwhelm nor impose unfair burdens on surrounding properties. I urge the Planning Commission to approve the staff recommendations for this project. I did meet with Dave, and then we met with John, and couple different meetings besides the neighborhood group on site. We recently spent a lot of money just cleaning it all up, removing a bunch of brush and old, not even trees, more like weed trees, and really making it, I think we can all agree, did a lot of work there to just improve what's going on there now. And I just like to do nice homes for people and provide quality living from people who care. That's our motto, Value Homes, quality living from people who care. We try to be the best at service, to respond, to be there. If the dishwasher goes out, boom, we're on it. The parking is just the thing. Without 4 spots, it doesn't make any sense, because it's like, who's gonna wanna lease a place? You lease 3 of them, and then the 4th person's like, oh, I have no parking. Oh, it just doesn't work. So, like William said, I mean, this is gonna be, you could do a lot more units. You could make it bigger, twice the size. You could do a whole bunch of different things that are larger, and we're not doing that. We're just, like you said, we're about a ratio of 1 when you can go far of 2, so half. And we just want quality living from people who care, which in this scenario with Johnson Street not being able to have any parking on it, with just at least 1 spot per unit is all we're asking for. So, do you guys have any questions for me at all?
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Rainville? Oh, sorry. Commissioner Bexley's after Commissioner Rainville.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I'm hearing you say is you would have difficulty renting out that 4th unit if you did not provide off-street parking?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, everybody wants parking. When, in all the properties that we have, that's a huge thing. So, yeah, it's just gonna be tough. I don't know what, I don't know. I mean, because it's, like William said, it's gonna be families or young professionals that are, have some roommates or whatnot, or couples with kids. And, unfortunately, I mean, we're not to the age of carless living at this point, so it's just hard to get places without at least 1 vehicle, So I don't know how it'd be tough. Yep.
Commissioner Bexley?
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, I think the 4 spots is, so I'm just curious on, because I'm sure you've looked at trying different configurations. I know you're undersized on the building, and making the building a little bit smaller to try to help accommodate those spots. Could you talk a little bit about how that would affect the project, for example?
Well, if the only way to do it would be if we made it smaller, you're just financially, it'd be tougher for it to make sense, just because now it's less rents per unit, less bedrooms. Obviously, 3 or 4 bedrooms, you get higher rents than a 2-bedroom. And that's really what we try to do to differentiate, because you can find a 2-bedroom anywhere in Northeast. I mean, there's all these new buildings all over the place, 2-bedroom, but we have more of a home. Larger rooms, larger spaces, where it feels like more like the suburbs, or where you can have, you can have some kids running around because you have a larger living room, larger bedroom, this and that. So that's how you get enough on the rent per unit to be able to make it work. We'd have to drop a unit, and then at that point, it's like, well, go back to the drawing board, really, to figure out how do we even make it work.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sure it's pretty close to getting those 4 on there. I don't think you'd have to drop units, but you would have to probably redesign the project.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. So I'm sure one way or another we'll make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
Commissioner Alper?
Thank you. It looks like a great project. I'm very excited to see units that have 3 or 4 bedrooms right across from the park. I think that's a wonderful addition for families. Something I'm wondering about your parking situation. Have you talked to any of the neighbors to see if they might have spare capacity on, in their driveways, in their garages, where that extra unit could rent a space and you could, work something out with planning staff and be able to proceed with that 4th unit? I just think I'd like to see this move forward, and I think there are some creative solutions that might be worth exploring. Thanks.
Yeah, we could definitely talk to neighbor. I know everybody on that alley on both sides, there's like driveways and parking, lots of parking, even just single families or duplexes. So I know that the one directly behind us, I forget his name, I don't know, William, if you remember, but he was concerned because he didn't want people like backing up into the garage. So we're gonna build some ballards there protecting his garage, and he was all for it. Sent a letter of support as well. So I definitely don't mind working things out with the neighbors. I mean, I don't know how easy it'll be to get somebody to, maybe they'll, for a certain monthly fee, they would lend me a spot. So I can definitely look into that.
Commissioner Campbell?
So I have a comment and then a question for Peter, if that's all right. My first comment is I don't think anybody up here is under the impression that this is a easy solution, because I think a lot of us really support the project. But I think the reality that we're faced with is that the city of Minneapolis has made a decision, especially in property locations like the one we're talking about today, which is on two major thoroughfares, not too far from major retail, that, you know, parking is not necessarily a priority for these certain places. And that's the reality of where we're moving as a city that I think needs to be taken into consideration here. I agree that people seeking this type of living may want a vehicle, but I also think that there are many people who are seeking this kind of living that may not want a vehicle. So I just want to make sure that we're clear here, because you mentioned something about, like, you know, suburban living, carless living, that kind of thing. The reality is that this is deep in the heart of, you know, Commissioner Rainville's neighborhood, and surrounded by a number of different transit opportunities. So I don't want to lose sight of the location of this site in the context of overall transportation options. Peter, I do have a question for you, if that's all right. The applicant had made a comment earlier that the two variance requests are related, and that the additional foot at the front of the house would help them meet requirements for the maneuvering in the back. Can you address that? Maybe I misunderstood that, but that's what I heard the applicant say.
Yeah, so I think the applicant was making the point that pulling the house forward on the site slightly creates some additional space behind the parking spaces between the parking and the alley, and that creates some more opportunities for maneuvering and visibility when cars would be backing out of the parking lot. It doesn't necessarily solve the problem in terms of the ordinance as far as how it's strictly interpreted with the layout, but it does, I think, probably help in terms of giving them a little extra breathing room.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and I guess my last comment would just be that the biggest concern for all the neighbors has just been parking. Like, parking, you know, this is parking, you can't park on Johnson, we don't want to overwhelm the parking and the parking. So it's like, we're just trying to get some more parking because of the neighborhood and what they've basically concerned, my thought as well. But we're really aligning ourselves with the neighbors that live in the block, on the block, to not worry them about, well, where are these people going to park, you know?
Thank you. We are going to move on to anyone else who would like to speak on this item. There are a number of you, so we are going to set a 2-minute timer for each person, which is this lovely large timer over here. And if you could try your best to not, repeat things that have already been said, we would appreciate that. But anyone who would like to speak can come up to the podium now, and you can state your name and address for the record and proceed with your comments. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the council members for allowing us to represent our alternate views, shall we say. I noticed a lot of, shall we say, discrepancies from reality and how this thing really looks and really fits. If you're standing in the lot like we were last week, we had a little meeting with John Bosler here. He's the neighbor across the alley. And his wife was there, I was there, Lori Dean was there. Anyway, it was a unanimous thought that what really needs to go there is a single-family home. That's what was there before. That's what's on the north side. That's what's on the south side. And this thing is a monstrosity. It's overbuilt without question. And a couple of things that have not been brought up yet is the front view. This is Dave's house. Dave will be up next. This is my house to the right. And if you can see, the little deck on the side here. It protrudes, sticks straight out towards my house. And it sounds crazy, but it aligns perfectly with our bedroom windows. So that, to us, is really unacceptable. The other thing about that side of the house is that there's air conditioners. There's going to be 4 air conditioners running. Well, this time of year, they'll be running constantly. Another thing is that it's roughly 40 feet tall to the peak. And that puts my house in a shadow, especially in the wintertime, complete shadow all winter long. So we are not condoning this thing at all. It is a monstrous mistake. The other thing is that I know where that's my limit, time limit? Okay. I know where the parking is going to be for extra cars, and it's going to be on Lincoln Street. And the people are going to walk through the yards of Mr. Bosler, anyone else along the alley on the other side, on the Lincoln side of the alley. So that's what's going to happen.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much, Madam President and commission members. My name is Dave Alderson. I do live immediately south of the project, and I understand what Eric is trying to do. It's brought on by the 2040 plan. In April of 2022, the sales price of that parcel jumped from $99,000 to $145,000 on the parcel that the city has estimated a current market value of $64,000. So one thing that it's done is has immediately raised the price of real estate in the neighborhood. And again, I don't blame developers. They're trying to put a quad there. That's how they can justify that. But it's blowing the roof off of the cost of local property. In my understanding, there are aspirational values in the 2040 plan that deal with things like affordability, home ownership, and so forth. And clearly, this is not addressing that. This is addressing simply the need for more housing. And I don't, it's a little bit easier to find. It's harder to find affordable housing than it is to find units that would go for $3,000 a month, which is pretty much what these are going to have to command in order to make it work. And again, I understand the math from Eric's standpoint. I get that. I guess I just don't feel like it's very respectful of the neighborhood, and I think that there are creating winners and losers in this situation. You can already put a triplex there, but that triplex can be a smaller footprint. I don't know that that smaller footprint's going to recapture his $145,000 for him, but that's a choice that they made when they bought that property. You folks seem inclined to let it go, and that's what it is. I'm just here to say that there's a cost to the 2040 plan in terms of driving wedges into neighborhoods, communities. We got together, there were 3 other homeowners, myself and John. I've had my property for 30 years, he's 31. We had 130 years of home ownership, and then here's a situation that's driven a wedge in our midst. So I just ask you to consider there's a human cost. You do create winners and losers sometimes, even though the 2040 plan has got some aspirational goals that I happen to agree with. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak on this item? Go ahead, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's John Bosler, and I'm at 2323 Lincoln, directly across the alley from this. I got to make this quick because my background's architecture and rental housing also, and I've developed several properties and redeveloped houses. I would encourage these guys to be able to figure out how to definitely get at least 4 spots if they're going to try to do a 4-plex there, because I know any 3-bedroom house is going to have more than 1 car, which leads me to my biggest concern, congestion on the alley. Currently, that alley, because Johnson Street is no parking, there's nowhere for any of those folks to have a guest over or anything right now. And you cannot get out of the alley, consequently, because you have signals at both ends, and there's double parking at the south end now. I can't even make that turn with my car. So what happens is the congestion, just the population, if you increase it by 4 households, you're gonna have so much more traffic, and it's on a south-facing slope. If it's wintertime and you meet someone in the alley, you're not going backwards, because in the first place, you're not gonna get on Lowry. And secondly, if you try to go backwards to the south, there's nowhere to back up to. No one knows what to do. We have way too many cars in that alley, traffic-wise. So I would encourage, I'm not talking about parked cars, I'm talking about traffic. That's not to mention all the other people who use that alley because they don't want to wait at a stoplight. So I think these are real concerns. I would encourage a duplex, single family, something smaller. Just try to lessen the number of cars going up and down the alley, because it's a real problem. And everybody on the alley deals with it. Massing-wise, just as an architect, I'm not sure how that really fits in with the fabric of that block and our neighborhood. Anyway, thanks.
Comments? Is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak on this item? You can state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Lily Hosebein. I own 2 properties on the block, and I live at 2415 Lincoln Street. I'm going to mirror a little bit what you said from a safety concern. I know they're saying it's marketing to families. My family of 4 could not afford to live there. So my concern is it's going to be roommates. It's going to be rental with the R4 coding. My understanding is that capacity is quite a bit larger. And I have young children on an alley walking to an elementary school that it's unsafe going in and out of. So while I do fully support more than a single family home, because we need to move that direction, this is a lot. The potential for 14 bedrooms, if there's roommates, is so much more traffic and so much more safety concerns for me and my family. I'm also very pregnant and very emotional, so I apologize, this is not a ploy. But I just think I like the idea of more homes and more people being able to live across from elementary school, but I don't think this is affordable family housing, especially if that's what they're trying to market it for. It's gonna be college students paying $500 a pop. And that's just where my concern is with the traffic and the parking.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? All right, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'm going to close the public hearing for this item. Commissioners, any discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Rainville?
Yes, I'd like to ask the builder or the architect about the gentleman who mentioned his bedroom, when the deck would be on his bedroom window. Is that something that can be resolved?
Commissioner Rainville, I will just point out from a staff perspective that is permitted in that location. It meets all of the required setbacks.
Thank you for telling me that. Can that be resolved?
Councilmember Rainville, we are willing to look at different options and move the balcony to a different location. At the neighborhood meeting, I did propose a second design that I will show you. That's the design right now. That is an alternate design that moves the balcony to the front of the building. But that requires a variance. So to do that, I need the front yard setback variance approved to do that design. Yes.
Commissioner McGuire, or Commissioner Alper?
I was just wondering if you could just quick flip back and forth between those one more time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner McGuire?
Okay, thanks. I would say I would agree with the staff interpretation. I feel for the neighborhood in terms of the parking. I think 4 stalls for 4 units seems logical. However, when we look at a variance, we have to look at the practical difficulty of the site under state statute. It doesn't look like there really is a practical difficulty with this site. I think we're going to be seeing a ton of these as people implement the 2040 plan. It's a 4-plex on a single family lot, which is kind of the spirit and intent of the 2040 plan. So I just don't think it warrants a variance. I looked at the contours. There's like a 2-foot grade change in the rear yard. I don't think that that's really not unique to this site. The properties next to it have like a reasonable setback. I just don't think there's anything unique about the property to warrant the variances. So I would just recommend going with the staff recommendation. However, I'm overall supportive of the project, so those would be my thoughts.
Commissioner Baxley?
Yeah, thanks. I am supportive of this project as well. And we hear this in this transition from where we are to now. These are difficult decisions, and they're always stressful because we're taking a current condition that has been, as you say, the way it's been for 30 years, and we're changing that. And but we do have to get to a different place. And I think I lived in my house for 30 years in South Minneapolis, across from a school too. And I think some of the things that the architects did at that time were sensitive to window placements. We're 10 feet away from our neighbors, but we never have a window that looks directly in. So I think some care could go into really understanding that and sort of tuning this as best we can. And I think it can work well. Again, it's half the size it could be. I mean, this could be a much bigger building. And I think, it's going to be fine. I'm not in support of the variance on the parking. I've just been I think you can get 4 spots in the back pretty easily. I think that should be done. So I'm not going to support the staff's position on that, both in the front and the back. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxley. Commissioner Alper?
Thank you. I support staff recommendations on this project. I just want to say that I think the alternate rendering with the front porch, I know I sit on my front porch all the time, and I love how that creates community and vibrancy, and I think that's in the spirit of the 2040 plan. I'd be supportive of that variance to reduce the minimum established front yard setback. It's 1 foot. It's about 1 foot.
So, Peter, they would have to come back with a whole new or a mostly new application if they were to change to that other design, correct?
Yeah, staff has not had a chance to review that proposal, so I can't say whether or not the variance as currently proposed would accommodate that. I'd have to review it and measure it and all of that. But
Okay, thank you. I'll just sort of pile on here. A larger building, like Commissioner Baxley said, could be built here with 0 parking, and legally we wouldn't have the standing to deny it unless the 2040 plan was amended. So another thing is financial considerations aren't a reason to allow a variance. And we don't require any parking. So you're given your site and you need to figure out how to fit however many parking spaces you think you need on that site with the building within the footprint. So I also will be supporting staff recommendation on this item. I wonder if anyone wants to make that motion.
I will make the motion to adopt item number 5 consistent with staff recommendations for items A, B, C, and D.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Commissioners, I think Commissioner Baxley's comments were somewhat leading to perhaps granting the most amount of flexibility to the applicant in order to allow them to come up with some solutions to provide 4 parking spaces on site. You'll note condition number 5 under the site plan review says that the applicant should modify the parking to no more than 3 parking spaces. That's a little duplicative because we're denying the variance under C. So if the intent is indeed to allow the applicant as much flexibility as possible to figure out a way to fit 4 spaces, the variance would still be denied and it would achieve that outcome by deleting condition number 5 under site plan review.
Okay. Commissioner McGuire?
Thanks for that clarification. I guess I'd say if they can make 4 parking spaces fit while complying with the requirements of the zoning code, I'm fine with that. So if we want to strike condition 5 from that, that would be it. I would amend my motion to include that if there's a second to that.
Commissioner Baxley, would you accept the friendly amendment?
Yes, thank you. Good catch.
Yes, thank you, Kimberly. All right, any discussion? Commissioner Rainville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to pull item B, the variance for the front yard. I'm very interested in doing that to allow that front porch, to allow the developer to come back with the front porch and make sure the gentleman doesn't have a balcony looking into his bedroom.
Okay. So why don't we start with approving items A, C, and D, striking condition 5 on D, and then discuss item B? Is that okay? All right. So the motion is to approve items A, C, and D, striking condition 5 on D. All right. Clerk, could you please call the roll on the motion?
Councilmember Alper. Aye. Councilmember Baxley.
Aye.
Commissioner. Thank you. I'm having a day like that today. Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Aye.
Commissioner Fayola. Aye. Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainville.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
That's 7 yeas and 0 nays.
All right. So item B is the variance to deny the front yard setback. So Commissioner Rainville, you're proposing approving the variance, but Peter said that he wasn't sure that would actually allow the porch.
Yes, so is it appropriate, I would ask our staff here, I'd ask Kimberly, is it appropriate to allow Peter and his, to review that before that can be made, that decision?
So the commission would need to make a decision tonight as to whether or not to approve the variance as proposed in the plans that were included in the packet. We can't evaluate an alternate proposal just on the fly right now, unfortunately. So if the commission wanted to grant variance B, it would be to allow the configuration that is in your packets only, and a revised plan would need to be brought forward that includes that 2nd-story balcony on the front.
And Kimberly, would we need to make legal findings to allow the variance?
Yes, to overturn staff recommendation, the commission would need to make findings to the contrary.
Okay. Anyone have any, well, I'm not sure what those findings would be my concern.
Can I ask a point of clarification? So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we could deny the variance for this particular front yard setback, ask the applicant to meet with city staff to help come up with a site plan that would incorporate the front yard with their review and have that come back to the commission one more time for that, whatever that front yard variance would be. Is that correct?
I just wanted to point out quickly that The proposal that the applicant brought tonight, the alternate proposal, may be allowable under the current ordinance, even if you deny the front yard variance request today, because balconies can encroach a certain amount into a yard. So there may be a configuration that works to change the balconies that could be approved administratively after the hearing. But we could work together to determine something that was workable within the ordinance, even while upholding staff recommendation.
Can I ask a question?
Commissioner Campbell?
Are we, so one of the applicants had said that it would require variance. Did you hear from city staff that that there would be a variance request needed in order to have that front yard porch, or was that a determination that you all made in reviewing the city code as written?
Commissioners, there's been a lot of changes to the city code recently. And I know there are a lot of rules around porches and stoops and steps and what is and what is not allowed in the front yard. The rules are very complicated and also have to do with precedents of what's around you. If you have porches around you, that also factors into the ordinance. I know that, as just shown there, I know that that balcony on the front of the building would project a foot in front of the setback line. So if you grant the variance, there's a lot of maybes over here, maybe, but if you grant the variance, then we don't have to come back. We can just do it.
That's not what we heard, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Peter-
what we heard
Peter
is
said-
that they have not reviewed this, and therefore they'd have to review it in order for them to make a determination. And I guess what I'm asking you is that you came up here and said that you've been told a variance would be needed for this, and Peter's telling us he's not quite sure that there would be, and so there's a discrepancy here. I think what you're hearing from the commission tonight is that there is, in the nature of what we're saying, is that we prefer that configuration of the site, and we would I'm at a loss for words, but the intention is for city staff to work closely with you to figure out what can be done to leave that site configuration the way that it is with the porch on front without having to come back in front of the commission, I think, which we can't really say, we can't dictate, but that's the meaning behind what I think our questions are getting towards. So, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's all right. Did you have any more questions for them? All right.
I'm just
The public
wondering
hearing is closed.
if there was just a way pending no deck on the second to the side, if there's a way to approve with the condition that there would be no second-story deck on the side. Just trying to help.
Yeah, we can discuss that.
I was actually going to suggest, one option here is there's a typical condition of approval that gets added sometimes that the applicant shall work with staff on alternatives or, potential opportunities to relocate that balcony to the front of the building. Then we can evaluate that. If it's determined it needs a variance, then that would need to come back in front of you. If it's possible to do it administratively, we would obviously do that, but that's basically acknowledging the issue and encouraging the applicant to work with us on some alternatives.
Thank you, Kimberly. Are there other questions? Commissioner McGuire or?
Okay, sounds like the commission is wanting to go, I'm hearing like general consensus to approve the variance in the front to activate the front yard and have them work with staff in order to get the balcony. So I'd be happy to make findings.
Do you
for
mean
that.
approve the denial or adopt
No,
staff recommendation?
No, approve the variance.
Okay.
I'd be happy to help make those findings.
Okay. All right. Are you done, Commissioner McGuire?
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Alper.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that the we're talking about 1 foot, 1 inch here within the current application before us. I support the applicant working with with staff to figure it out for the front porch. And one thought here on a finding is policy 8, public safety through environmental design, using design principles that ensure a safe and welcoming environment when designing all projects that impact the public realm. And particularly this one talks about orienting buildings, entrances, circulation movement patterns to the street to function as eyes that watch over street activity, like looking out on the street. So I think that front porch, both the top and bottom, really fit with that. So I would be in support of using that as a finding to support the variance. Is that the, not deny the variance.
Okay. I agree that it's just 1 foot, which is why I'm inclined to deny the variance and have them work with staff to figure it out. This is a big building. If you can't find a foot somewhere, I just don't want to, be getting 1 foot variances every week that we then discuss to death. I love discussing with you guys, but. Commissioner McGuire?
The other thing I'll say is it doesn't really sound like the applicant has super worked with staff on this. So maybe we can deny the variance and you can work with staff. They're a great resource. They really understand the complex code that has changed. So maybe we deny the variance now and you can just work with staff, listen to them, work with Peter. He's super smart on the variance, and then you can come back to us if it works. Would everyone be okay with that? With trusting Peter? I will make a motion to deny the variance to reduce the minimum established front yard from 19 feet 4 inches to 18 feet 3 inches and recommend that the applicant work with staff.
That was a motion to deny the variance. Yep. Correct. All right. Is there a second?
Could I make that a little tougher with your permission? That they work with staff so that this gentleman's bedroom window does not have a patio looking into it. Is that okay?
I don't think there's an essential nexus between the variance for the front yard and the deck, which I think is legally required for we can't, those two aren't related, right? So we can just recommend that they do the variance, or we can deny the variance, we can recommend that they work on the balcony, but I don't think we can dictate that because that's just a recommendation.
Yes,
Am I right?
commissioners, we can't add a condition of approval to a denial.
That makes sense.
I'm not asking for a condition. I'm just asking to be sensitive to the gentleman's bedroom window.
Okay, so it was not an amendment to the motion. Got it. Okay. So
Can't work with them.
So the motion on the table is to deny variance item B and ask the applicant to work with staff on potentially adding the balcony in the front. Okay. And we have a motion, and was there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner Alper.
No.
Commissioner Baxley.
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell.
Aye.
Commissioner Faola.
Abstain.
Excuse me, one moment. Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainville.
No.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
That's 4 yeas, 2 nays, and 1 abstention.
All right, that motion passes. Our next item is 17-7, oh wait, sorry, that's consent. Just kidding, just kidding. Our next item is item number 8, 210 Lake Street East, and staff is Andrew Friends.
Good afternoon, President Olson and Commissioners. Before you today are 3 applications associated with an addition and remodel to the existing McDonald's restaurant located at 210 East Lake Street. This property is located on the north side of Lake Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue South, and is developed with a single-story fast food restaurant building and drive-through facility, which were constructed in 1973. Both the fast food restaurant use of the building and the drive-through facility at the property are legal non-conforming uses. The applicant is proposing a variety of interior and exterior modifications to the existing building, including the construction of 3 small additions. The additions would allow for a new entry vestibule located closer to the front property line on Lake Street, new ADA accessible customer restrooms, and some additional back-of-house space, including the relocation of 1 drive-through window. The applicant is seeking an expansion of nonconforming use application to allow the proposed building additions. The applicant is also proposing a variety of site work, including the replacement of the existing internally illuminated freestanding sign that serves as the menu board for the drive-through use with a new freestanding dynamic sign. In this zoning district, a conditional use permit is required for a dynamic sign, so the applicant is seeking that conditional use permit. And this dynamic sign would also not comply with all of the specific sign standards for dynamic signs. And there are 2 of those that they are not meeting. The first is that dynamic signs are required to be located a minimum of 100 feet from residence or office residence districts. And then the second is, and here, this dynamic sign would be located 51 feet from the adjacent residential property to the north, and approximately 66 feet from the adjacent residential building to the north. Dynamic signs are also required to maintain a static display for a period of at least 60 seconds. The majority of this sign would comply with that standard, but a portion of the sign would be utilized to display pending orders, and that portion of the sign would not comply with that 60-second static display. So the applicant is seeking a variance to the standards for dynamic signs to allow the sign as proposed. One public comment was received after publication, which you should have received today. For the expansion of nonconforming use application, I'm happy to go into the specific findings if you have any questions, but staff has found that the application meets all of the required findings and is recommending approval of that application. For the conditional use permit, staff has found that the proposal meets the CUP findings 1, 3, and 4, as well as the additional findings for sign adjustments, but has found that the proposal does not meet findings 2, 5, and 6. For finding number 2, staff finds the proposed dynamic sign may be injurious to the use or enjoyment of the adjacent property to the north. That adjacent property is occupied by a 2-story duplex. As I mentioned, the sign would be located approximately 51 feet from that property, approximately 66 feet from the building itself, which does not meet the standard in the ordinance of 100 feet from residential property lines. The intent of this provision is to prevent dynamic signs from impacting the residential character of the residence and office residence districts. For conditional use permit for the CUP finding number 5, we found that the dynamic sign would be consistent with the applicable land use and policy guidance that applies to the site from the comp plan, but would be inconsistent with adopted policy and action steps contained in the comp plan. Policy 4, action step G, specifically addresses and directs the city to utilize regulatory tools to minimize the impact of commercial uses on adjacent residential properties. This 100-foot standard that we have in the code for dynamic signs is one such tool. And so by not meeting that standard, this proposal is not meeting that action step in the comp plan. Last, for finding number 6, staff notes that the proposal would only comply with the ordinance if the required variance to the dynamic sign standards, which is approved, which is not recommended by staff. So staff is recommending denial of the conditional use permit as the application does not meet the required findings. For the variance, we've found that the proposal meets the first variance finding as well as the 2 findings for sign adjustments, but that it does not meet findings number 2 and 3. For the second finding, we found that the variance is not in keeping with the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan. The proposed configuration of windows facing the adjacent residential use and being located closer than that 100 feet there, when you have residential windows on both the first and second floor facing the sign, directly conflicts with the intent of that provision. This isn't a situation where you have a residential use that does not have residential windows, or where you have a sign that's facing the other direction. In this case, the sign is facing directly into that adjacent residential use. For the third finding, we found that the variance may have a negative impact on the character of the area and the use and enjoyment of nearby property. As previously noted, this would be located closer than is typically allowed to an adjacent residential use. The applicant has proposed a 6-foot privacy fence along much of the north elevation, which would screen the proposed sign from most of the first floor windows. Staff would note that the proposed fence would not screen the sign from the adjacent residential windows on the second floor, and that the proposed fence here is still falling below the basic requirements in the zoning code for landscaping and screening between a commercial parking area and an adjacent residential use. So normally you would be required to provide a 6-foot privacy fence like what they're proposing, as well as a landscaped yard of 7 feet in width. They have nonconformities, legal nonconformities to the site plan review standards, so they're not required to provide that. But I think it speaks to the potential impact on adjacent properties and how unusual this condition is. Staff would also note that the drive-through facility on the property currently operates until midnight on weekdays and until 4 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. So staff finds that the proposed condition would be having an unusual level of impact on this adjacent residential property and causing impacts that could potentially be injurious to the use and enjoyment of that property. So staff is recommending denial of the variance as the application does not meet the required findings. So with that, we are recommending approval of the expansion of nonconforming use application subject to the conditions listed in the staff report and denial of the CUP and variance. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for staff? Commissioner McGuire?
Thanks, Andrew. Is the existing sign illuminated?
That's correct. The existing sign is internally illuminated.
Is it less illuminated than the proposed new sign?
The applicant has stated that, and they'll probably speak to that when they come up. There's sort of two things I would say in response to that. One is that we've requested that they submit documentation as to the illumination of the existing sign. They haven't submitted that. They said that it doesn't exist. But one other thing that I would point out is that different types of illumination can be perceived differently. There can be different levels of glare, even if the measured illumination is lower, right? So in general, LED illumination is perceived as brighter than an incandescent or fluorescent illumination that may actually be less. I think it's something that our enforcement, our zoning inspectors have struggled with. I think we can all picture the canopies on holiday gas stations. They recently, I guess it's been a while now, but they converted those to LEDs. When that happened, we received a lot of complaints, and it was very obvious looking at them that most people would perceive that as a lot brighter, but the light doesn't actually have much more illumination and complies with the ordinance. So I think comparing different types of illumination is difficult to do.
Okay, thank you. It was my gut reaction that the existing sign would be dimmer than the new signs. Is that just kind of a fair?
I don't know that we have enough information to say that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Commissioner Baxley?
Thanks, Andrew. It's also the orientation of this sign. If it wasn't facing the residential or another spot, would you still deny it, or is that how does that affect our reading of this?
Yeah, Commissioner Baxley, I think that is an interesting question. I think the responses to the findings would be different in that case. Whether or not we would support the variance, I don't know. This site does have a lot of unique constraints, right? With a drive-through, there are limitations to how you can circulate through a site. You have to have the ordering point and the drive-through windows on the left side of vehicles. And this site has a lot of nonconformities. McDonald's worked with staff, myself, as well as Public Works for about 2 years on different options for this site. And the nonconformities that they have here are fairly advantageous to McDonald's, and they were interested in a larger project to the site, but we were not able to come up with a different site plan that met the requirements that McDonald's corporate had, as well as the zoning code and the requirements that the city Public Works Department had for access.
Thank you. How was the parking count determined? Is that by McDonald's corporate? How did you determine the appropriate number of parking spots on site?
Commissioner Baxley, we don't have a requirement, as you know, so that would be a question for McDonald's corporate. In this case, they're non-conforming to the maximum number of spaces, and they're not increasing the number.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions for staff before I open the public hearing? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Andrew. I'll open the public hearing. So if the applicant would like to come forward and state your name and address for the record, you can go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Justin. I'm one of the owners of 210 East Lake location. First off, I just want to say I appreciate you guys allowing me to introduce myself today. Many times during this process, the development team and corporate partners really are the point of contact, rightfully so. But us local owner-operators relish at the chance to put a face with a brand and a face with a specific location. So I appreciate that. My family and I have been in the business for about 20 plus years with McDonald's. We have been of service to the community and serving the community. We consider ourselves municipal ecosystem partners and believe in the greater Minneapolis vision or long-term plans, as well as the surrounding areas. This particular location is special to us. You know, we think, as I grew up in Minneapolis as well, this has been like a marquee location. I don't know if you guys are from the area as well. And to see its blight has been kind of tough. We acquired the location in 2019, and from that standpoint, we've been kind of in the fight with McDonald's. Fight's a strong word. In the planning stage with McDonald's, trying to really give this restaurant the facelift and remodel that it deserves and the community deserves. We are excited about the remodel today. Excuse me, I'm gonna go to my notes here. Right, we're excited about the remodel here today and look forward to providing the community and the Lake Street corridor with a building that's in concert with the new 35W ramp and the Lake Street corridor itself. We make a priority to hire locally, so about 50 to 60 of our employees that are hired, the majority of them are from the community and have been there prior to us taking over. This remodel building will provide many efficiencies inside and out. We'll give the community and the guest experience some of the latest technologies and the experience that they deserve and that really that they're seeing across the city at other locations and probably wondering why their McDonald's isn't being remodeled, updated. I don't want to talk too much about the details. That's what we have the development team for, but to your point, the digital menu board, from my understanding, is dimmer luminescent than the current one. And we'll probably talk about that today here. I'm sorry, not the current menu board. The one proposed, it will be a dimmer NIL than the one that we currently have. And so for our standpoint, it seems to be a better product and for the community and also will add more flexibility. But with that, some of the detail stuff and some of the questions you guys had, I'm sure my team has answers for, our team has answers for. And so I want to introduce Carol Lansing and the rest of the McDonald's team. Thank you.
She's on the applicant team. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Carol Lansing. I'm an attorney at Fagery Drinker, downtown Minneapolis. And I'm working with McDonald's and the Baylors on this application. And first, I'd like to thank Andrew for putting a lot of time into this project. There has been a lot of discussion over several years. I am going to speak primarily to the sign applications, as staff is recommending approval of the alteration and expansion. However, along with Justin, Curtis DeMars from McDonald's corporate office and Tom Meyer with Landform, the project manager for the applications, are here to address any other questions you may have as well. You know, applications to improve non-conforming drive-throughs are particularly tricky, right? Because they are non-conforming and there's a lot of policy reasons for that. On the other hand, they provide essential services to people. When the City Council was having public hearings on this in 2019 before adopting a prohibition on new non-conforming uses, there was a lot of testimony saying these are important. We need these services. They help make businesses like restaurants and banks and pharmacies accessible to a lot of people who don't have that ability as easily as people who can drive and park or walk there. And the City Council members, I heard them say, you know, these businesses are still going to be there. They're going to be legally non-conforming and you can go to them. But if you want these businesses, and the pandemic showed all of us that they can be essential to a lot of us in different circumstances. But if you want these businesses to be successful and to be good parts of the business community, like other businesses, they have to be allowed to evolve and make the improvements, normal improvements that businesses would make to their appearance, but also to their technology and their efficiency. So just to give you, we didn't have in the packet visuals, so just to let you know, this is what the existing store looks like. Old format, and the new remodeled will be updated in its materials and appearance. Then, you know, and staff has recognized that that is the purpose of allowing this expansion of an non-conforming use. Their recommendations regarding the sign, CUP, and variances really come down to just one reason, that the sign is going to be closer than 100 feet to the neighboring property. So if you find that that's okay, that we meet the findings for not being injurious to the use of the neighboring property and not being out of character with the area, then you can approve all of those applications. And staff did find that there are practical difficulties for placing that sign anywhere else. The location of the building and the drive-through is existing, and there's no place, you know, further than 100 feet that you can put it. We also can't change the orientation to face away from the residences because the driver's side is on the left, and, you know, they'd be talking across the passenger side to do that. And staff also recommended that these menu boards have some unique considerations because of the service that they provide in fast food. Regarding the purpose and intent of this 100-foot standard, staff states that it's to prevent dynamic signs from unreasonably impacting the residential character of or use of and enjoyment of adjacent properties. And the rest of what I want to talk to you about is why we believe that the proposed sign will be less impactful than the existing one. So here is the existing sign. It's got 4 panels. The sign menus are paper. It's two-sided, and the menu is changed manually by rotating those panels day and night, or for breakfast and evening menus. Now, this sign is old. This individual one is old and needs to be replaced, but it's no longer produced. So it's not just a matter of getting the same sign and putting that in. This is a comparison of the old and new, and Andrew showed you this. I want to point out the new sign is going to be about half the size of the old sign. So, you know, that's a lesser visual impact. It's also, you know, much cleaner, neater looking. The menu options are changed electronically, as I'm sure you've seen. And that feature of being able to display and confirm the order is important for, particularly for people who have hearing difficulties or the deaf community. So, The digital sign will also emit less light. So we don't have a cut sheet for the old sign, but that with the data, but McDonald's engineers in their design team have said that the existing sign can emit up to 3,000 nits of brightness, or emits 3,000 nits of brightness, and it's not adjustable. So you turn it on and it's on. Now, the new signs are adjustable and dim automatically at night. The maximum luminance for the new sign would be 2,500 nits, so that's already, and don't ask me to get into nits more than what I'm saying, I admit that. But, its maximum is less than the current sign, and it will automatically dim to 500 at night. So, and I don't think it's a good comparison to talk about LED lights like for decoration or canopies, because those are there is no regulation on them like there are on signs that they dim to 500 at night. And of course, the dynamic sign will be more energy efficient, and that's part of sustainability efforts. I want to show you the distance of the sign from the property. This is the existing site plan, and currently the sign is here at the corner of the building, and I kind of tried to highlight it in yellow. The pink is where the new sign will be. So they're at the same, distance from a property line, perpendicular, but it would be moving to the east, and here's the proposed configuration, and that's because that helps with the spacing of the cars in the drive-through, so there's less congestion around that sign. But my point is that it is, the existing sign is that close to a property line already. And it's lit, and it faces the adjacent property. With respect to this fence, McDonald's has offered to put in the screening fence. As Andrew said, it's non-conforming in terms of site plan requirements. This proposal does, however, do some increasing of landscape area and reduction of parking spaces, not a lot, but by a few. And then this fence is an effort to help screen these lower windows. Adding landscaping on the inside of that fence wouldn't make any difference in terms of its screening function. So I don't think that's necessarily relevant here. It doesn't screen the upper windows. I'll say the upper windows aren't screened currently from a sign, but also the LED lighting is less intense as you look at it from angles either above or to the side. It's designed to be visible and impactful to the people standing right in front of it for signs like this. All right. The other context I think that's important is that somebody looking at this sign from the north is going to see it in the context of the lights from the parking lot, the store, Lake Street, the other businesses, a really big digital billboard on top of the building at the corner, and the highway. One final issue I wanted to say before summing up is it's not in the staff report, but the team has engaged with the community neighborhood organization. They met with them virtually about a year ago. When the plans were revised some, they updated them in the process that the organization wanted, but ultimately Phillips West did not take a position in any way. So in summary, this sign will be less impactful. And if you find that to be the case, you can make all the required findings. It'll be smaller, it'll be dimmer, it'll be more attractive, more energy efficient. It will be the same distance from a residential property line. The screening fence would be an improvement over current conditions. We do believe, like I said, it will be dimmer. And in context, we think it does not change or negatively affect the character of the area or the use of property. So,
thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant before we move on? Commissioner Rainville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious, Mr. Baylor, I'd like to know how many employees that you have at this location.
The amount of employees we have roughly is between 50 to 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much a year do you pay in property tax?
It's a good question. I don't know offhand.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner McGuire?
Andrew, will they be doing the fence regardless of the sign application? I do think the fence is a good idea. Is that part of, I couldn't tell if that was part of just the non-conforming expansion.
Commissioner McGuire, that's not something that we are requiring because they're not subject to site plan review. Should the commission choose to approve the applications, that's certainly something you could connect to the findings and have as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's yours. Okay. All right, is there, did you have a question? Commissioner Bexley?
Question. Thank you, Carol. My experience with the new, and this will be an improvement over the existing sign, but the existing sign most likely is probably a fluorescent bulb of a certain.
Commissioner Bexley, could you get closer to your mic? Thanks.
A certain temperature. The new one probably is going to be LED, which is a different temperature of light than that's there. And my experience with those is, it's pretty intense. It's designed to be very crisp and specific. And while this will be smaller, it will have a different impact. And so I think improving non-conforming uses is always a challenge. I think I would have liked to see some more information around that sign. I mean, the sign is the issue, the type of illumination is the issue. Those things can be measured. I think it's not an unreasonable expectation to bring those things forward as part of the application.
Yeah, hi, I'm Curtis DeMars, the Regional Construction Manager for McDonald's, and that is a good question. So we reached out to our electrical engineer, and the existing menu boards, they're backlit by T12 fluorescent bulbs. And so we don't have a cut sheet on that per se. We would really have to go out there at night with a meter and see how much light those put out. We do have a lot of information though on the LED screens. We even have a graph. But the takeaway is, at their brightest, they are at the 2500 nit. It is a focused to kind of like your computer screen. If you turn it to the side, you can't see it as well. The other benefit is, with it being smaller, we can actually angle it at like a 35-degree angle, so it's not pointed straight at the neighbor's window versus the larger non-digital menu board. That's going to have to be at a true, it's going to be parallel with the neighbors, so that kind of in general shining that direction. So, yeah, to your point, what I've been calling our sign installers, nobody has cut sheets. We have cut sheets on the actual size of it, but it's just a metal box with the T12 bulbs in there. And as you saw, it was almost double the size of the digital menu board. So, the technology is nothing new. We do have other McDonald's in Minneapolis that have the digital menu boards, and so it's not something new. Our competitors, we have some competitors that have it too. So it's not that we're asking for something new, but certainly with this site, I agree. I think Carol did a great job describing that. In our opinion, this is actually less impactful than the existing non-digital menu board.
Yeah, I might argue with that, only that the new one's old and it's kind of dim, and this one, you're going to notice a lot more than that new sign. But I think I think the ability, it would be great to be able to dim it at night, and so if that does work, that's terrific. That will be better. And I think we want these to improve. In normal locations, those signs are awesome. There's so much better interaction there. It's just we have neighbors so close here, we want to make sure that we're taking care of them as well. And so I appreciate the screen wall. I think that's going to make a big difference. And unfortunately, our friends that live on the second floor are already impacted tremendously by a lot more light pollution than just that sign. So I think if this goes forward, I think that screen wall is a must. So.
Yeah, and the other thing to note too is that, just like with your computer, I have the black background for my Outlook just because it's easier on my eyes. The digital menu boards give us that option. We can go with a black background at night, again, to dim the overall. It has the sensor on there, so it's automatically fluctuating with the ambient light. Yeah. Same with the speakers. Those are automatically adjusting to ambient sound. But
yeah, that'd be great. I think, ones I've interfaced with have the white background. And
Yeah.
Yeah, those are pretty intense. So if that can flip at night, that'd be even better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I also want to thank Andrew and his staff, because we have been working with staff for years on the expanding non-conforming use. So we super worked with staff, I think was Commissioner McGuire's word on that. So I want to thank staff on, the expansion of non-conforming use. It's a win for the neighborhood and win for McDonald's and win for the Baylors for sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item before we close the public hearing? All right, I'm not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Rainville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like a motion to approve item A, the expansion of a non-conforming use, and then pull item B, the conditional use permit, and item C, the variance, for a separate vote.
All right, is there a motion to approve, or a second on a motion to approve item A?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the, any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to add the fence as a requirement in there, because if the sign gets denied, I'd still like the fence there, because it sounds like the buffer wasn't up to our current standards anyway. Would you guys accept my friendly amendment to include the fence no matter what happens? Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Alper?
Yeah, I just have a question, and I realize this may not be the right point to bring this up, but I'm just noting this email correspondence with Hennepin County about the easterly access, Lake Street access, and I'm wondering if that could potentially be a condition closing that access point could potentially also be a condition we could add? Or where it's at. It's two separate questions. Where this is at and the condition potential.
Commissioner Alper, both Paul Miller, who is in the Public Works Department and is reviewing this from Public Works Traffic and Right-of-Way, and I did respond to the county and talked a little bit about their request. They currently have non-conforming rights to the curb cuts that they have, right? And so there are a lot of things about this site that we would never allow to be established today, but they have a legal right to continue using them. We can attach conditions of approval that involve nonconformities. So it is possible that a condition of approval about eliminating a curb cut could be attached to a land use application. However, it has to have a grounding in the findings, right? And so you would have to make under one of the findings for the expansion of NCU, you'd have to connect that to the closure of that curb cut. Staff did not feel that there was a strong connection, and so we did not make that recommendation, but you certainly could.
All right, so we have a motion to approve item A with an added condition that, could you say what your condition is?
That they include the 6-foot fence from the sign plan, regardless.
All right, and there was a second from Commissioner Baxley, I believe, including?
Correct.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Baxley.
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell.
Aye.
Commissioner Faola.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainville.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
That's 7 yeas and 0 nays.
All right. Would anyone like Commissioner McGuire?
I would like to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation for B and C. I think, so I Googled McDonald's is the 107th largest company in the United States. I just have to think that they could bring us a cut sheet on the current sign to get Andrew's information so we could see if the actual comparison. I feel like they have the resources to do that and didn't, so I don't feel like we have the information to approve those. I think they could always come back if they wanted with that information and work with staff. It sounds like Andrew asked for that. So I would recommend denial of items B and C.
All right. Is there a second? Commissioner Campbell, were you gonna, or did you want to say something? Okay.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Campbell?
I think we can also make, I mean, that sword cuts both ways, right? Like they're the 107th largest company, and so they, you know, in theory might have access to that. I think the way the sword cuts the other way is that as the 107th largest company, one would think that they would have the resources to be able to figure out that information, and they haven't been able to do that. And so I don't know that. I think, you know, one of the things that we just have to make an assumption here, I think today is, you know, what's an appropriate level of illumination in our neighborhoods that we're willing to accept based on the information we have in front of us here. I think we also need to balance the impact of the decisions that, you know, we make as a board as it relates to private investment as it does to people's residential living standards, and making a determination with context in mind. I think, you know, I can't remember her name, but did a great job of it, I think, providing some context that it's not just about the sign, it's about the surrounding environment. It's about the lights in the parking lot. It's, you know, about traffic and car lights that are pulling through that alley. And I'm still torn as to whether or not I support the variance, but I do think context is important in this case. As we think about, you know, trying to make sure that we've got, you know, business owners who are making a difference in our community by employing dozens of people. We're trying to incorporate private investment into the work that we do. And, you know, I think there is, I know I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth here, but, you know, drive-throughs are important for a large part of our population, right? And I think it's hard to look past that. So I would say, you know, we have the information we're given. It doesn't sound like they're going to be able to find much more. And I would recommend that the board make a decision based on what we have in front of us today, with the understanding that there likely is not more information we'll get in the future.
Okay. Commissioner Fayola.
I just want to thank you for doing such a thorough job, and I am from the neighborhood, and it's great to see that you're spending the investment to redevelop the site, because I think it's a landmark site with new 35 and the train station and the developments on Lake Street. So I guess I'll second what the commissioner said previously, and I think there are a lot of other factors, and I'm not an expert on non-conforming use properties, but it sounds like there's just a little bit of wiggling that needs to be done, and so I thank you for your thorough presentation. Thanks.
Commissioner Baxley? Oh, Commissioner Rainville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote to approve both the conditional use permit and the variance. I think they've made the case that it's going to help their business. The signage is smaller, and as a commission, we need to support the private sector in providing these services in our neighborhood. So I want to make it very clear, I will support both the conditional use permit and the variance.
Commissioner Campbell.
And I would support that. I think, you know, specifically with, you know, business districts and corridors section of the comprehensive plan, specifically mentions both inviting private investment and developing programs and strategies that minimize business displacement. I think this falls within that as findings to support that motion.
Anyone else have comments? All right, so do we have a motion? What was the motion? Staff recommendation denial. Yeah, okay, so the motion on the table is to adopt staff recommendation, which denies the conditional use permit and the variance. So is there any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing no discussion, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Baxley.
Nay.
Commissioner Campbell,
Nay.
Commissioner Fayola,
Nay.
Commissioner McGuire,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainville,
Nay.
Chair Olson.
Aye.
So that's 3 yeas and 4 nays.
All right, so that motion fails. Would someone like to make a different motion and, assuming it's the opposite motion of what we just made, support it with your legal findings for each one? What the reasoning is to approve the conditional use permit and the variance.
I could make a motion. I'll move to, oh gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong. I'm going to move to deny staff recommendation and support approval of the non-conforming use for the dynamic sign with the condition that the fence be added as part of the design using policy 58, business districts and corridors, and specifically inciting private investment and minimizing business displacement as legal findings to support the motion.
All right, Commissioner McGuire.
Okay, I would make a second, but I think you actually want to recommend approval of the conditional use permit and approval of the variance.
Did we not already approve the conditional use permit?
No.
We approved.
We approved item A, so I think you want approval of item B and C.
Yeah.
That's
If you will
correct.
accept
Yes,
my
sorry.
friendly amendment.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Fayola.
I believe the fence was in the first.
It is in the first one.
So we got that fence covered.
Okay, great. We can take the fence off then.
All right. Anyone else? Any discussion on that? Commissioner Alper?
Do I need to could I add a condition about the easterly Lake Street access, or do I have to tie it?
You do have to tie it.
I'll think about that.
All right.
We will also need additional legal findings. We have one comp plan policy, which does a little bit to support finding number 2 under the variance and one of the findings under the conditional use permit. But there are additional findings that need to be made. In particular, under the variance, we will need a practical difficulty finding in order to approve that application.
Commissioner Alper?
I'm curious, maybe this isn't the time, and I am happy to retract this, but curious if the Lake Street, the McDonald's on East Lake has had a similar issue that was overcome. Maybe staff know.
We have seen several similar applications to swap out menu board signs with dynamic signs. We have not had one identical to this where one of the variances required is a variance for the distance to an adjacent residential use.
Can I make findings?
Commissioner McGuire, actually, let's let Andrew.
I have the conditional use permit findings listed here.
If I may, I'd just like to make a brief comment on the findings. We did make the finding for practical difficulty. So really it is finding number 3 for the variance, which I think you have sort of gotten to talking about it being less impactful than the existing condition. So if someone maybe wants to kind of summarize those as findings. And then I think the conditional use permit findings are sort of, as Carol Lansing mentioned, sort of built off of the variance. So I think just meeting that one would give us enough to work off of.
We want to try to do that, Commissioner McGuire?
Okay, so for item C, the variance for the dynamic display for a minimum distance to the residential property and to reduce the minimum duration of the static display. I think the static display, it's a very small portion of the sign that's a static display just for the orders that are coming in. I do think that that's reasonable. It doesn't seem like our code is potentially keeping up with the times in that instance because it is small. And as the applicant mentioned, it does help with the ADA compliance. In terms of the distance to a residential property line, I do think it's less impactful than what's there today, and that the layout of the current property as lawful non-conforming can be the practical difficulty. I don't think the variance, I guess I'll have a finding that the proposed variance would not be detrimental to the health, safety, or public welfare of the general public or those utilizing the property or nearby properties. I do not believe the proposed variance would alter the essential character of the locality or be injurious to the use of the other properties in the vicinity. And they're adding that fence in there as an additional condition to help buffer that. As another commissioner mentioned, I'll also note that the sign is likely as bright as car lights that are going through. And then for the conditional use permit findings, I believe we are agreeing with staff on number 1, that it would not impact health, safety, public welfare. For number 2, I would say that the sign would not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the vicinity. It's just a replacement and an upgrade to a current sign to come along with industry standards. And that fence is going to help block the glare from the adjacent properties, and they should dim the sign at night. There will be adequate utilities, adequate measures to minimize traffic congestion, and then we do think it is consistent with the policies of the comprehensive plan, specifically those related to business development and the rebuilding of Lake Street. Is that significant? Did I hit them all? And 6. I'm going through these in the code or in the staff report. And then the conditional use permit number 6 should meet all other applicable regulations of the district. Did I get them all?
All right, thank you, Commissioner McGuire. She's a planner, you can tell. So we have a motion and findings on the table to approve items B and C. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Baxley?
Question for Andrew on C. Was there not I guess it's tied up, if you approve one, then you don't consider the other, but a practical difficulty in terms of locating the sign on this property, given its location and configuration?
Sorry, Commissioner Baxley, I thought that I had made that finding already, but
You did, but if you could restate it.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I don't have it in front of me here, but we talked about the layout of the existing site and the restrictions of the placement of the existing building, location of existing curb cuts, how the menu board needs to be on the left side of a vehicle, and how our zoning code today, especially when it comes to the duration of the static display, is really not written to address improvements to drive-throughs. And so it's difficult for them to comply with our existing regulations, even for relatively minor changes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion before we call the roll? All right. Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner Alper?
Pass.
Just so I'm clear, is that an abstention or that, oh, you want to come back? Okay.
Can we do?
All right. Commissioner Baxley?
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell?
Aye.
Commissioner Faola?
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire?
No.
Commissioner Rainville?
Aye.
Commissioner Alper? And Chair Olson?
No.
So that's 4 yeas and 3 nays.
All right. That motion passes, and that item is complete. Our next item is item number 9, and this is 1111 3rd Avenue South, 330 South 12th Street, and staff is Hillary DeVork.
That's correct. Good evening, Commissioners. Just for a time check, I'm wondering, since this was pulled by a commissioner, do you want a full presentation or do you just have questions? Okay. I will not do a presentation then for the interest
Go ahead,
of time.
Commissioner Alper.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Hillary. Really appreciate it. So I wanted to pull this from the consent agenda because I have concerns
at the macro level, as we look at how this project fits into our goals as part of the comprehensive plan, the 2040 comp plan. And I know I talked about this, brought this up when it came before the committee of the whole, looking particularly at the public realm improvements and parking needs, and really encouraged the applicant, which I mean, I know it's listed here as 1111, no, partners, but, you know, I mean, it really is, it's a city project, and we are here, we're all city residents, we care about our city, and I want to see this project really reflect the values of what city residents want to see and what we all are looking for in the comprehensive plan that we adopted as a city. So, I guess where I'm going with this, a few different things. Really, it's about the variance and the site plan review. And I brought this up at the committee of the whole, but 8-foot sidewalks as part of a public realm improvements, which I'm going to quote from the comprehensive plan on page 122. One of the action steps under Policy 7, Public Realm, is to require developers to implement public realm improvements called for in the citywide framework. I would think that the things that they're doing through the TDM plan for public realm improvements are the bare minimum. And by they, I really mean it's our I feel it's our project. It's going to be a police station for our city. And so I'm concerned, you know, 8-foot sidewalks are no good if they're blocked with barbed wire and concrete barriers. So I guess the question I have is, what commitment do we have that these public realm improvements, which were agreed upon in the TDMP, and which are called for in the comprehensive plan as a bare minimum, so it's kind of duplicative to have it both in the TDM plan. What commitments do we have that these will be respected? Do we have any?
In terms of putting Jersey barriers with barbed wire, I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
I would ask Hennepin County why theirs are still up across the street. I don't know why they're still up. I don't know why. I mean, we can imagine or assume why they went up in the first place. If something unfortunate, God forbid, happened again in our city, I can imagine people would maybe be taking precautions again like we've seen over the last 2 years. So I don't think I can guarantee, and nor can anyone guarantee to you, that we will never be in a situation where one may not need to block a sidewalk. But I can say that these changes will be done. The city does not own this building. We will be purchasing a space within the building. So this is not a city project. I want to make that clear to the public, that the city will be purchasing that space, not the building, not the property underneath it, not the land. So this is owned by 1111 Partners LLC, not by the city of Minneapolis.
Great, but city funds will be used on this project?
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks. So I know we've talked briefly about this beforehand, but the parking, you know, it's like a requirement, as cited in the packet. It was 36 for the police station, and we are looking at a variance of tenfold. And I know no additional parking is being built with this project. It's an existing facility. It's great to see this reuse, but that's a big difference from our comp plan, our zoning code, and what is being asked for by the applicant, which again, I understand it's a private entity, but it's really us. So if that, I guess I'm concerned about approving this and setting a precedent with something that doesn't match our guidance. I don't know if anybody else says that. But I guess I'm sort of wondering, and I got a question from a constituent of mine, what will this parking be used for? Is it for storing evidence? Is it for stolen vehicles? Is it for police officers' personal vehicles? Do you happen to know?
I believe it's for squad cars and then for the personal vehicles of those using the squad cars.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. Will city employees working at the police station, which I'm sure include police officers, will they be charged for parking their personal vehicles, or is this?
I do not know that.
Okay, you don't know. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that most city staff do not receive free parking. So disappointed to see that the packet doesn't contain what that charge will be for city staff at this location. We know that charging for parking is a proven TDM, transportation demand management strategy, and that there, you need carrots and you need sticks. And so, like, charging for parking is one way to create this vision of a thriving city that we all want to see with the comprehensive plan. And there's no commitment with this project that our own city staff will work towards this goal, the goals in here. And public realm improvements that we have 4 points within the TDMP, 3 of which are public realm improvements, which again, they strike me as the bare minimum that we should be doing. I think the real commitment to city's goals would be to try a little harder, that we could do better here, that we could charge for parking. That could be a strategy. It's certainly something that could be done. In terms of public realm improvements, we could see Jersey barriers, like in, I think it's Jersey City, actually, to separate bikes from cars on 11th Avenue South. That would go over and above. And we're not seeing that. Right now we have subpar bike lanes where you think you might die on them. So and then, those trees in there, and here I am representing the park board. I just want to say there's some, it's great that we're going to have trees on here. 30% of new trees, especially when they're built in industrial areas, they die in the first couple of years. And I don't see any commitment in here to watering those trees, at a bare minimum. So I guess those are my points. I personally would be open to denying the variance in A, and adding a condition perhaps to the site plan review with the landscaping that they water the trees. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Alpert. Commissioner Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Commissioner Alpers, your points were raised at the city level when we approved this. So, city employees do receive free parking, as do park board employees. You do not charge your employees to park in the lot at the park board. Correct. So, and the use of those, the reason they have to increase it so much is for the squad cars and for the officers to protect their cars from vandalism. So that's who will be using the spaces.
Correct. Maybe I should just back up and have maybe just done a presentation, because I thought it was a question, not a conversation. So I apologize to the whole commission for not starting the vote. For the variance, there are 435 spaces in the parking garage. 200 of those will be allocated to the police department. They need to secure those police cars and that space for the officers to do their job. Whether they're bringing people or evidence or whatnot in, I don't know the details of that. That was not disclosed. I did not ask those types of questions, as I did not feel it was necessary to put that into a report. But what is important to note is that they do need to have a certain number of spaces to manage the police force, and those spaces do need to be separated. There are no more spaces being added to the site. They're already there. They were built into the middle of the donut-shaped building. The reason for the TDMP, honestly, is because we had grave concerns about the number of cars all utilizing the one access point on 12th. We would have given them 500 points to put in the second access point if that was where we needed to go. That is really what Public Works wanted as a commitment, was that second access point on 12th, because we had very, very big concerns about cars and buses conflicting with the number of buses that come in and out in AM and PM rush. So they are going to give us that second. The rest of the things are all good. They are all good. We will have a transit screen in the hotel, and we will have improved public realm. We're going from sidewalk to curb, adding green boulevards, getting wider sidewalks, and we are, as conditions of approval on the site plan review, asking for more improvements along 12th and 4th at that corner. So we are hopefully going to be fully improving the public realm around this block once this project is done. I will stand for any questions.
Commissioner McGuire?
Okay, thanks, Hillary. Do you know what the parking ramp was used for before? It does seem like a ton of parking stalls.
It's a public parking ramp. That's what, since it was converted from a gymnasium to a public, or an auditorium to a public parking garage, it's been used for the public. Hennepin County used it when they had their offices in there, but they also used it as public parking. It's continuously been used as public parking. So the hotel will use some, the police will use some, and the rest will be used as public parking just like it is today. We could all go park there right now if we wanted.
Got it.
'Cause
Okay.
it's open.
Thank you. So I guess just for the record, city staff does not get free parking. Maybe the police officers do, but city staff do not get free parking. Correct?
There are a few select city staff people who do have parking worked into their contracts or their salaries as part of a benefits package that does not extend to general city staff. That's, I think, generally reserved for appointed positions. And potentially, I have no idea what other departments do, but within CPED, it's appointed positions only.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I guess I'm kind of torn on the variance request because it is existing. However, I do feel like we should be holding ourselves and our police department to the strongest of standards. And that is nothing against you, Hillary. I think this is great. I just think in today's day and age, the police should be the first ones following the rules. So I feel a little weird granting them a variance for like 190 parking stalls. I'll just leave it at that.
Are there other, I'm just imagining other police precincts. It does not seem like there's even a quarter of that many parking stalls. So why does this one need so many more?
I do not know the specifics of police precincts and the parking ratios to which they're allocated. I don't know, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't know if we have off-street parking other places or whatnot, but I know that the former 3rd precinct on Lake Street did have a large parking lot to the west of it. That is the one police precinct that I can think of off the top of my head.
Commissioners, as noted in the staff report as well, it's the existing layout of this ramp that is in part leading to the number of parking spaces. There are only certain locations that lend themselves to demising walls to section off the number of spaces that the police department is going to be leasing. So because the ramp is existing, structural walls are in place, there are only certain areas where it can be sectioned off. As a result of that, the number of parking spaces in this area where it makes sense to actually section off the building is a very large number of parking spaces. That's the real practical difficulty here.
Okay. Commissioner Campbell, did you? Okay, Commissioner Baxley?
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Alper's concerns there. I think there are some specifics around police, private vehicles, and the function of squads. You can't have one entrance, somebody could block the entrance, you could have multiple entrances for folks to get out. I think the security is a real issue there, and I think the ability to take a ramp that is inefficient, and reuse it in a way that protects the officers, I think is a good thing. So I just want to state that support. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just bringing up the floor plans in case you had questions, but you can see the blue is allocated for the police station, the pink is allocated for residential, the parking garage is in the middle of the building, and as you go down, they've allocated, the basement for the police, and then as you go up, you start to get to the hotel and the transients, and then the graphic here, in the corner. every time I go to Adobe, it's different. You can't see what I'm pointing at. But in the bottom right corner, if you guys can see it on your screens, it's also in the packets. It shows just the section of the garage, so you can understand where people are coming from 11th or 12th, and then how they split up when they get inside. So it is a function of the existing facility. I will also just joke, and I'm sure Michael Margulies, the applicant's representative, is laughing at me because he argued with me to not require this variance. And we said, no, you need it. So we are here. Thank you.
All right, any questions or discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner McGuire.
I just have one more question, sorry. So the police parking is, the way that I'm understanding this works is these are all squad cars. You come in with your personal vehicle, you park it where the squad car goes, and then you take the squad car out. So really it's closer to like a 1-for-1 with employee vehicles taking up the squad parking. It's like a 2-to-1, right? We don't have parking for employees and squads. A lot of them are overlapping and taking out squad vehicles. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Just in general? Okay. I know it's not a perfect 1-to-1, but that's...
It's probably not a perfect 1-to-1.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Okay. Thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation on item 9 for items A through D. Second.
All right. There's no B. Okay, well, A, C, and D. All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Alper.
Yes, I would like to add a condition
Excuse me,
the site.
Chair Ellison, I was just informed that we never opened the public hearing.
Oh, okay. Excellent point. I will now open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone, would the applicant like to come forward and speak on this item? My apologies.
Chair and members of the commission, my name is Michael Margulies. I'm with Newton Res LLC, and I'm project representative for 111 Partners. Thank, first of all, Hillary, for a lot of hard work and careful look at this. We know that this project has been a process of serious negotiation between the city and the owners, and many of the topics that you're concerned about tonight are really outside of the developer's hands. They are going to be decisions that the city makes. The city is going to be purchasing this property, and then they'll be leasing from the owner of the ramp a certain number of parking spaces. Hillary and I have had some discussions about whether that triggers the variance, because if this parking ramp were not available, the city would go across the street to lease from somebody else, or just as they're doing now for the current precinct. So I think the parking issue is a little bit of a red herring, but I understand why numerically it doesn't work. I want to speak to Councilmembers Alver's question about irrigation, and I think that's a legitimate concern, and I'll call your attention to the fine print on the landscape plan number 13, which requires an irrigation system to be installed. And finally, as to how the city sets rules for they're going to be leasing these number of spaces, how they set rules for how they use them, how they allocate them among their users and for the police force. We'll leave that up to the city and their policies. The owner of the property doesn't have any purview over that. Other than that, are there any questions that I can answer on behalf of the ownership?
Thank you. Any questions? It looks like Commissioner Alper. Nope. Oh.
Yeah, I just, I think there are almost 150 pages, so I'm just trying to pull up number 13. Which page was the irrigation on?
I'm looking at L1.0, and that is on the land use application plan, it's probably the fourth page. Excuse me, the fifth page.
Oh, sorry, are there any other questions while we find that page? All right.
I think given the time, Commissioner McGuire and I give up on trying to find the irrigation.
May I just show, may I
Yep, please.
present this to you?
Can I ask staff while she's looking at that, do we take an escrow for trees or anything to make sure they don't die and get replanted if they do die within a certain time period or anything?
We do not.
Okay.
We do have zoning enforcement staff that enforces site plan compliance to the best of their ability, and that includes landscaping.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Is there anyone else? Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this item? All right. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. We have a motion on the table to approve items A, C, and D with staff recommendation. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Alper?
Yeah, thanks for showing me the irrigation plan. I'd still like to add a condition about really taking care of these trees, like bagging the new trees, filling them up. I think it's like 10 gallons worth of water that you put in a bag all at once, something like that. Like
Point of
extra
order,
care,
Madam
yeah?
Chair. We need a second. I'd like to second.
Oh, apologies. I thought there was a second. So a motion from Campbell and a second from Rainville. Is that correct? Oh, okay. All right. We have a second. Okay. Okay. All right. So if you would like to suggest your friendly amendment, then the motion makers can accept or deny.
Okay. And I forget who were, Commissioner Campbell, Commissioner Baxley, would you be willing to accept that friendly amendment?
Is that something that we can attach?
Can you reword your condition of approval?
Yes, that the applicants place, I'm not sure exactly of the name, but like new tree bags around the trees and commit to watering them weekly, like filling the bags throughout the summer.
I would encourage a more vague condition of approval that could be enforced by our zoning enforcement staff, like the applicant maintain irrigation on the trees, but I will let you word it however you choose.
I just think it's more than the drip irrigation in the site plan that I just read. I really think it's tree specific. So why don't we just say tree specific, tree watering, water the tree specific irrigation, something like that.
Are you asking for something that we would normally not require of a applicant?
Yeah, I haven't seen that come across.
No, I guess what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, this seems over and above what we would normally do for any other applicant that's planting trees. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe it is, and I believe that's, we saw that article in the, hopefully many of you saw that article in the Star Tribune recently citing trees that die in St. Paul and the industrial zone at University and where is it? Creative Enterprise Zone. There we go. And so, yes, I do think it requires going above and beyond just basic irrigation to help keep trees alive in areas that have heavy amounts of concrete, like downtown, and impervious surfaces.
Is the concern that the trees will die? Is that the concern? Okay. So the trees are required to be replaced if they die, correct?
Right, and we're talking, I think, mostly right-of-way trees, which actually are provided by the park board and monitored by the park board. I mean, I know that we are, as residents, you are encouraged to water your new trees when they bring you the bag on the boulevard. But they are gonna have irrigation, which is more than what I have in my boulevard, or anyone on this, living in a residential area. So they will have irrigation, and they will be monitored, and we will have a year-out inspection for them. And so if things die, the park board is the one that comes and replaces them. And the applicants through this process and PDR will be working with Craig Pincala from the park board on tree selection and then the structural soils that are going underneath to help ensure that they grow.
Kimberly?
Yes, I also just wanted to point out, this is subject to section 530.210 of the zoning code under landscaping and screening for site plan review, which under 3 specifically says, maintenance and replacement of landscape materials shall be the responsibility of the applicant or property owner, including the maintenance of any trees planted in the right-of-way. An adequate water supply shall be indicated in the site plan. Landscape maintenance should incorporate environmentally sound management practices, including the following: the use of water and energy-efficient systems such as drip irrigation, pruning, and anticipating and allowing plant community succession. There's also some language in there about replacing dead materials annually. So we could simply add a condition of approval that the applicant comply with section 530.210 of site plan review.
Sure.
Great.
All right, so accepted the friendly amendment. How about you, Commissioner Baxley? All right. So we have a motion to, wait, hold on.
You want me to say it again?
Yeah.
Motion to adopt staff recommendation on items A, C, and D, or A, B, and D.
Not A, C, and D.
A, C, and D.
With an added condition on item D that they comply with the section of the zoning code that Kimberly mentioned regarding landscaping.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Baxley.
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell.
Aye.
Commissioner Faola.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainville.
Aye.
Chair Olson.
Aye.
That's 7 yeas and 0 nays.
All right, that motion passes and that item is complete. Our final item for this evening is item number 14. Wait. Yeah. Item number 14. 2815 and 2821 West 44th Street, and staff is Mailing Smith. Is there a trick? I think we may need to pause. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
That's fine, because I can't.
Okay, yeah. Then
Right
we'll
there.
have a quorum when someone comes back. Okay.
We're paused?
Whenever you're ready, we have a quorum again.
Good evening, Chair Olson and Commissioners. My name is Mei-Ling Smith. I'm Senior Planner with CPAD. And the subject site is 3 parcels at 44th and Vincent in Southwest Minneapolis. The site is currently zoned R2B. There's also a section of the site that is located in the Shoreland Overlay District. And then the entire site is in the Corridor 3 Built Form Overlay District. The proposal is a 4-story residential building with 38 dwelling units. And there's also a below-grade parking area. There's no surface parking. It's all below grade. And there's 42 bike parking spaces as well. There are 2 public hearing items for your review tonight. It's the rezoning from R2B to the R4 district, as well as site plan review. And the applicant is also submitting the administrative height application, as well as the premium and is including the premium for environmental sustainability to qualify for that application. And that's to increase the height of the building from 3 stories in corridor 3 to 4 stories. So here's some images of the existing site. The top shows you what the frontage looks like along 44th to the north. And then the middle picture shows you the Vincent Avenue facade, so you can see the side of one of the single-family homes. Here's a rendering of the proposed structure. Let's see. And then here's the site plan showing the L-shaped building. As you can see in the lower right-hand corner, that's actually a patio. And so there would be the building would be cut away from there, and the footprint of the building is set back about 13 feet from the south property line. This is a little bit hard to read, but there's the site plan. And then you can see from the floor plan that the entrance to the below-grade parking area is from 44th. And so that's just like right here. The development includes walk-up units on both frontages as well. Here's the underground parking, second floor, third floor, and the 4th floor. The main exterior materials are a gray brick base. The white material is a fiber cement siding, and the accent materials are aluminum panels. I can show you a little bit slower. And then this is a context study that the applicant has provided. You can see the building in the center, the proposed building in the center. It's next to a 4-story condo building directly to the east on the lakeside of the project. On the opposite side of the street, you see a church, a school, and also a 7-story apartment building or condo building. And then there's single-family homes to the south of the site. Staff's recommendation is to approve both applications, and then the primary conditions of approval would be to eliminate or revise the dog run that's proposed along the south, and to add 4 canopy trees somewhere on the site. The applicant has already provided plans that show compliance with these conditions of approval, so they are amenable to those changes. And then we would also recommend screening the transformer to comply with the zoning code requirements, provide some exterior lighting, and then just ensure that they're complying with the proposed premiums for the life of the structure. And with that, I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mei-Ling. Commissioners, any questions for staff before we move forward? All right, thank you. I will now open the public hearing for this item. Would the applicant for the project please come forward first, say your name and address for the record, and proceed with your comments.
Thank you. My name is Charles Burdick. I'm at 4948 Thomas Avenue South, about 15 minutes walk from this site. I'm with Streetfront Development. My partner is Thomas Herzog of Good Neighbor Homes, and also with us tonight is Natalie Wiersma from Design by Mello, the architecture firm. I'll be quick since there's a number of neighbors who've been quite patient to share their opinions as well. We're very excited to propose more housing choices for this walkable neighborhood. We worked through several rounds of design and really appreciate the feedback from Mei-Ling to help us avoid potential variance conditions. And with her feedback, we are presenting this proposal without any variances. We met with the neighborhood organization twice over the last several months, and As you might expect, heard a lot of input regarding parking. We did make changes to the parking plan in response, and we're able to add a few more parking spots to get to the plans that are before you today. And we want to thank you, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, so we'll move forward with any residents who would like to speak on this item. Again, we're going to use the timer today because we have so many of you. So please keep your comments to 2 minutes, and please avoid mentioning things that have already been brought up. So please state your name and address for the record, and go ahead.
My name is Sandy Rubenstein. I live at 4400 Upton, and I am a lifelong resident of Southwest Minneapolis. And I just want to say that there are a lot of concerns to this project. I don't see any benefits to the neighborhood at this point except financial gain. By the 3 houses that actually approach the developer, all parties will obviously gain financially from this. I am on the HOA board for this condo building, which was converted in approximately 2004 from an apartment building that was built in 1964. I'm very concerned about the soil, about the feasibility of building this building right next to our building, which already has some cracks in it. I'm very concerned about the driveway proposed to be right next to our driveway. I'm worried about collapsing our garage. This is a very old building, and I don't know if there's been enough studies done on, obviously I'm not a professional in this area, but I'm concerned about that. So did I do okay with my time? Yes. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Steve Arnold. I'm the owner of 4425 Vincent Avenue South, 4 houses to the south on the same side of the street of this development. Just for reference, my wife, Gail, and I have owned this property for 25 years, lived on the site for 22 years, and I have a neighborhood business less than a block away from the... So I have a lengthy experience living and working near this proposed development. I just would like to state my comment that I strongly feel this development has not addressed the parking element for the neighborhood. I've attended the 2 Zoom meetings and have learned that there are many fewer parking spaces than apartments in the building. It's very realistic to consider that 30 to 75 additional cars for residents and visitors will be pushed onto adjoining streets beyond the current demands from the homeowners and residents who live there now. This is, if this is allowed to develop, homeowners will be forced to park blocks from their own homes, and access to their own dwellings will be significantly restricted. This block south on Vincent now is very congested, with most homeowners splitting their parking needs with driveway and street parking based on the many duplexes located here, along with single-family homes with multiple cars. The close proximity to Linden Hills Business District always requires additional parking for customers and employees in this area. It's difficult to find parking already without adding this large development to the mix. My neighbors and I are very concerned about this project if we're allowed to move forward. How do I come home with groceries if I can't find a place to park to unload? I'm going to be parking blocks away from my own dwelling. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Christopher Maddox, and I live at 4400 Upton, the the condo building on the corner. A couple of the concerns I had have already been addressed. So the 1 or 2 concerns I want to bring up is that the entrance to my parking ramp in 4400 Upton is opposite another large condo building who have their parking ramp dead opposite. This new building is proposed to have the parking ramp next to my parking ramp, and apart from the construction concerns, it's very difficult to get out of my ramp because of parked cars on the street. You can often not see cars coming towards you. So if there's another ramp next to mine, it's going to make that situation even more chaotic. And that's a big concern from a safety point of view for pedestrians and also for vehicles. Added to that, there is a school across the road. When parents come to drop off and pick up the children, it's chaotic. It's an area of half a block where you've got the 3 buildings and the school, and I think that's a safety concern, again, for pedestrians and for vehicles, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like?
Good evening, Chairman Olson and the Commission. My name is Kevin Jagelski. I live at 4416 Vincent Avenue South, just up the street from this development. I'm going to mimic a little bit what was said, but I want to add to this, and this is the safety concern. I'm not here to complain about a building being built. I am concerned about the size or the magnitude of this. This intersection, 4416, is extremely congested. During one of the Zoom calls, we even brought this up to the developers. And they were going to do a study on it, or they were going to look at it, and I heard nothing from that. Tomorrow school starts at Carondelet. We have cars that park in front of our driveway. We can't even get into our driveway because of the congestion. Every morning, every evening, it's the same problem throughout the school year. The other thing is the buses. There's a lot of buses that park on 4416, on Vincent, on 44th Street, and it is just absolute chaos. When I've lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years, and we tell our kids, whenever you cross the street, don't trust the light. Every single day, we will see cars going right through that stoplight. We even bought a car that has a camera that will stop the car if there's kids, because there's so many kids that go up and down our sidewalk. I'm very concerned about this property, being that it's from a safety perspective, and I'm really concerned that somebody's going to get hurt with this. I personally have been hit by a car crossing the street. Fortunately, I was able to push myself off. We had a contractor at our house last year doing some work. As they were leaving, it was so congested that they got into a car accident at 44th and Vincent. Adding more traffic, more congestion to this neighborhood is the wrong thing to do. And this is something that I'm just waiting for the day to hear an ambulance coming, picking up a kid that was hit by a car. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item?
Hello, my name is Michael Kroyman. I also live at 4400 Upton. I wanted to speak to the shadow study that was done and the raising the maximum height allowed. I live on the 2nd floor of the building and I get very minimal daylight already. I have very little direct light, and I'm concerned that allowing a building to be built taller would eliminate that and would severely limit the daylight that I receive, and that's a huge concern for me, and I imagine that it would be for people on the 1st floor as well. And another thing I guess I wanted to add to the parking discussion, Upton Avenue's parking from, I believe, November to April is limited to only one side of the street during that period, which increases the congestion there, and so I'm concerned that that would just, add on to the things that we've discussed already. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Tamara Imbertson, and I also live at 4416 Vincent. And I know my husband touched on many of these points already, but this is additional. There's gridlock on 44th and Vincent today. So if you're turning from 44th on to Vincent, there are typically 2 cars parked on that intersection on Vincent. And when there's a car waiting at the light in the traffic lane, no one can turn in. So what you have is you've got a green light, but you can't turn in. They've got a red light, so then you have to wait until they go and until all the traffic from Vincent goes. So you continue to have a gridlock situation right at that intersection. That's today without any additional traffic, without additional cars. The other thing I'll say, which I would say my parking driveway has been blocked in more than 3 times this year. So I can't get out. There was a time I had to leave to take my son to a doctor appointment, and it's distressing when you can't get out and you've got an appointment to get to. So I just wanted to say I'd like to see more consideration of the traffic concerns that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? All right, I'm not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments or discussion? I'll just say that, this is a rezoning to be in compliance with our comprehensive plan, and it's a site plan review. So this is essentially something that can be built as of right. We don't require parking anymore, so they could come and build this building with 0 parking. It sounds like they've responded to the neighborhood in some ways by maybe adding a little bit more after hearing that concern. So yeah, I'm gonna support staff recommendation on this item. Commissioner McGuire.
Thanks. I saw in the staff report, and I'm sorry to step out for a second, so I apologize if this was discussed. There was alternative compliance for 2 items. The blank wall that staff is recommending approval of alternative compliance, and the lack of trees on site that staff was open to either allowing alternative compliance or not. I feel like we should require the trees on site personally for that alternative compliance. For the blank wall along the south side, I guess I don't care as much, but I would just recommend that the trees would be a condition of approval there, because that actually does traffic calming. It creates more of a sense of place, so I think that could help alleviate some of the neighbors' concerns as well. So if staff was open to that, that would be one of my recommendations. Sorry again if that was discussed.
It's actually, it might be hard to find. It's part of condition number 6 under site plan review.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Well, that was my major concern. The other thing, I guess, is sorry. One of the residents mentioned the shadowing study. It looked like there was a shadow study provided. I don't know if it was in here. I didn't have review that. Are they doing anything with the height to meet that alternative compliance of like the step back or whatever that they usually do, or creating articulation? Could you just talk to that just a little bit?
So the shadow study, we wouldn't trigger alternative compliance for the shadow study. So I think in the staff findings, I'm sorry I don't have it, the shadow study here, but we find that many buildings do some shadowing throughout the year. It just depends on the time of day. And so for the shadow study that they provided, it was in the north and northeast, like the properties to the north and northeast at certain parts of the day in certain seasons. It wouldn't be year round, it wouldn't be all day. So it's not something that we trigger alternative compliance for, but it was part of our findings for the height increase study.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Baxley?
Yeah, I'm going to support this project, but we are adding to what I think is already a congested situation from a car standpoint. So I think those safety concerns are pretty real. And I know the city reviews these things and will be, but Maylin, could you talk maybe a little bit about what is the review process around traffic? I know there's no TDMP for this.
Yep, and I can maybe just highlight that part. So if you have 50 dwelling units or more as part of a new project, then we would start to look at a TDMP. And even that doesn't trigger a full traffic study. It's triggering the provision of strategies to mitigate some of the impacts, related to having more dwelling units or something of a higher intensity on the site. So yeah, a full traffic study wouldn't even be required at that level. But we do encourage the applicant early on to work with Public Works. So Public Works has reviewed this on a preliminary basis. They've approved where the curb cut location is based on our city policies and their site-specific policies as well. But beyond that, sometimes we've seen for maybe more commercial buildings downtown where there's a lot of in and out traffic for a curb cut, you might see some traffic calming measures added. Personally, I don't remember seeing that a lot for just a medium, small apartment building, but Kimberly may have more recollection of those. But not to put you on the spot, but I
Oh, that's
can't
okay.
think of.
I don't know that I've worked on a project or seen one in years recently, a solely residential project of this scale that's actually come back with intersection impacts that have resulted in requiring a signal or anything to that effect. I think that's only come up one time, and it was a Starbucks drive-through.
Yeah, is there any, anytime we come up out of an underground condition, we've got walls on either side, your view shed is pretty limited, especially if cars are parked on either side. Is there requirements for voice notification or any of those things that are required?
So yeah, those are the types of strategies I was thinking of and that we've seen downtown for more like commercial parking garages, and I haven't seen that for this. But so it's not part of a standard process that zoning requires or that Public Works requires unless they think it's a really good idea, and I don't believe that they've added that comment specifically to the preliminary development review.
I guess I would encourage the development team, it is it's great you're providing some parking there, but that is a condition really to pay attention to, especially from a bystander. And so I think any auditory signals or things you can do to alert folks and then really understand how people are going to park on the street relative to that entrance. It's going to get pretty dense, and it's going to affect your tenants coming out of there as well. So.
One thing that I've been thinking about for a few weeks actually is at these public hearings, for projects similar to this, we often hear a lot about both parking concerns and traffic concerns. The concern that there's not enough parking, but there's also too much traffic, and we don't want to add to that. And I'll say, those two things don't necessarily go together. Adding more cars, even if you can park them downstairs, doesn't mean we're going to reduce the traffic impacts. So I think, adding more opportunities for people to use bicycles or other means of transportation. In this neighborhood, you can walk, to get things that you need. And I think that's just sort of a little cognitive dissonance that many of us in the community are still sort of working through. I'll get off my soapbox. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, can I?
Yep.
I would make a motion to approve the site plan. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. I would like to make a motion to approve items A and B consistent with staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Baxley.
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell.
Aye.
Commissioner Faola.
Abstain.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainville.
Aye.
Chair Olson.
Aye.
That's 6 yeas and 1 abstention.
All right, that motion passes and that item is complete. That was our last discussion item for the evening. Do we have any announcements from staff?
We do not. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Anything else from the commission before we adjourn? All right, if not, and without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Our next Planning Commission regular meeting will be the 16th, and the next committee of the whole meeting will be this Thursday. Oh, the 19th is the next meeting. All right.